Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Shadowland, a new documentary from director Occult-tinged, and this film focuses on a specific region in France nestled in the French Pyrenees, where witchcraft and magic comes together. And this film has a very haunting and interesting dynamic. It has an atmosphere that really breeds this engaging and haunting kind of experience. It's a fascinating exploration of the occult and magic and this kind of like darker side of humanity that not a lot of people confront or take a look at. Now, a lot of this is focused through the perspectives of like former Hollywood director Richard Stanley, who lives out there, does tours and stuff like that. He's part of this community very closely. And he brings us through a lot of this perspective and these interesting ideas and mythology and such. Then the film really comes to a challenging situation where a bunch of stuff starts coming out about Richard Stanley in terms of abuse, and they finally get to talk to one of his victims, and you have this shift where the film can't focus as much on the occult aspects and like what it's really trying to say, and has to start focusing on Stanley, who you start to realize is very like self-mythologizing, very narcissistically trying to make this film really about him, and dealing with like this big baggage of these abuse cases. And I feel like the film really loses its way in trying to, like, this idea of exploring the this place in the French Pyrenees that's focusing on the occult and witchcraft and this magical element in the world where we don't really confront that a whole lot as societies. And the film really loses its way and gets bogged down in like this Me Too documenting and stuff like that, which those two films on their own would be interesting enough, but like neither of them really work well together. And this film becomes so bogged down in focusing on just Stanley. I think he does a big measure of that, like pulling in the attention, and also just like, how do you not confront it? And I feel like Iranon wound up in a very difficult situation in terms of how they were going to finish off their film and accomplish what they were trying to do. And I feel like this film loses its way and becomes a completely different kind of film halfway through, which is interesting in its own right, but nothing really gets resolved about this case. As like what we're seeing here, we do get to hear from one of his victims and how she feels ostracized from her community because of him. And it just, at the end of the day, I feel like this film never really accomplishes what it went out to do in the first place, and then gets bogged down in this investigation that veers it so far off from center, and it never really is able to commit to either of those two things, and turns out to be a pretty messy experience. But those are my thoughts on Shadowland. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.